Hello all, Alison here. Welcome back to Words and Pictures for a little more tag time. Forgive the morning sunshine on the desk. It's at that particular angle, at that particular time, at this time of year, and I'm ready to head out into the birch forests. It's exactly where I was yesterday. Well, they're not strictly birch forests, they're mixed, deciduous and evergreen, but there are birch trees everywhere here in the Czech Republic. So it's no surprise that I love using my Tim Holtz Birch stencil. And yeah, I thought we'd do a springtime version. We've done nighttime versions. You can see here from the stamping that's left on it that we've done some wintry versions, but I thought it was about time we got springtime on the mat with the birch trees. So I've got a few distress inks. I'm going to start with creating my background. I thought we'd do a bit of stamping, and I've got some of the grasses from Grungy Grassy Gel Printing session, which I pressed between paper when I was done. They've got some paint on them and that sort of thing, but they're rather beautiful. And they might make their way onto these tags as a final layer, I think. So I'm going to start in the sky. I'm not going to have one blending tool for each colour. I'm going to go sort of one for the blueies and one for the greenies, and just start at the top with some summer sky. This is Faded Jeans. Maybe bring in some broken china. Oh, not being very careful about keeping my stencil still, but if it ends up being a kind of impressionist painting with soft lines and blurred edges, maybe that's a lovely thing. As you can see, I've got two tags on the table. I may or may not end up using both of them. We might just give ourselves one tag for once, or I might find it irresistible. Okay, switch to the green one. I don't think I'm going to go bundled sage. I think I might go straight in with the peeled paint, but quite a light touch. So I'm not pressing very firmly. I'm just transferring a gentle amount of ink. That's the peeled paint. This is the Mowed lawn. As you can see, I kind of try to line up the lid so that as I'm glancing around, I can see which one it is that belongs to each colour and reach for the one I'm after. Right, so as you can see, the top bit's kind of gone sideways a bit as I'm doing that. It's not a problem. The trees are going to basically line up again. And there we go. So then through that, keeping that in place, if you want, if it's helpful, one can at this point tape it down, but I think I'm just gonna go with it. Some of our good old spritz and flick technique, like so. If you missed the spritz and flick video, I will definitely link to that, as I will also link to the grungy grasses so that you can find those videos if you would like to. Going to let that water just play with the ink for a moment. So doing this through the stencil just means that it's just the inky bits that I'm hitting, and then pick it up. I do want to work with two tags. I do. So you can see that gives us, and I can lift up because this is quite an easy stencil to replace, and it has, some of that water has gone underneath, but I quite like that. It's already softening those birch trees. We're going to do some work on those anyway in a minute. But then the other thing I want to do through the stencil is a little bit of background stamping, just to get a bit more texture. So as I say, quite easy to just line this stencil up again so that you've got it where you need it. And you sort of see that moment where it pops into focus. I'll zoom in a little bit for the next little bit of stamping. Right, time for a bit of grassy detail stamping, and controversially I'm thinking of using not grasses at all, but these little berry branches from one of my recent PaperArtsy stamp sets. Any sort of grassy or botanical textures you've got will do. I had originally thought I might stamp in distress ink, but I think I probably want it to stay put if I put future layers on. So I'm going to go with an Archival, and I think I'm going to make them sort of branches in the background rather than grasses. So I might go with this soft Pebble beach, or would it be better to go green? Ooh, or sort of a distant This is a pretty colour that I very rarely use, peat moss. Let's try something different for a change. Let's go peat moss and see how that looks. So the stencil is back in place. The shadows are getting deeper, but I'm enjoying the morning sunshine streaming through the window, so I'm afraid I'm going to persevere. And I'm just going to add some of these as they are background detail. They're not the thing we're going to end up interested in, I hope, but they're just giving us a bit of interest and detail in that background. Might have some going a little higher up there, and then I'm not pressing down on the stems here. I'm just pressing down on that upper part because I didn't want those slightly thicker stems involved, because down here I want to put a bit more grass. So it's sort of building up little layers of detail in the background. Again, I'm only pressing down on that top bit, not putting in the stems, and I think I want one last little bit up there. So let's look at what we've got between the trees there, and that's how to get those into the background. It's just a really lovely little detailing technique. Grand. I think what I might do now, I'm already really happy with the look of that. What I might do now is just get this second tag on the go, so that we're ready to do birch trees all in one. 2 tags ready to go, one with a bit more spritz and flicking, splotchy texture, one with a bit less, but I love both of them. That kind of, I don't know, it's like summer pollen in the sky, the haze of light. Let's create some shading on our birch trees, although they already look good like this. I think that's the joy of this stencil. So you could choose to add shadow just to one side of the trunks, and that'll create a sense of light coming. You could even add a highlight with some white ink or paint on the other side of the trunk, or you can add a bit of shading to both sides of the trunk, which might give us more of a sort of 3D rounding. I think that's what I might have a little go at today. Distress watercolor pencils, or you can use just a regular watercolor pencil. What's quite nice is if you've got something that will blend out a little bit, I might put some pumice stone in, maybe hickory smoke, and we'll have black soot and maybe ground espresso on standby. Not sure that we'll use all of those. So what I'm going to aim to do is just hit these trunks. If you feel nervous about doing this freehand, you can of course continue to use the stencil as a guide. Let it help you. That's what craft tools are there for. And the stencil, just by drawing around the inside of it, will give you. So pumice stone is sort of the palest colour I'm planning to use, so I'm fine with it creeping a bit further onto the trunk. The one that I will try to control and keep a little bit more delicately to the edges would be the black soot, if I get as far as black soot. So with these crisscross branches, I'm going to mainly aim for the underside of the branch to give that some weight. Coming down, catching those. So one of the things with this is there's no harm in repeat use of favourite craft products. You can always give them a different look. So this is going to be quite substantially different from some of the other birch tree, atmospheric, wintry Christmas ones. Oh, of course, I should link to those as well for you. But I hope you can see as those bits of pencil go on, they're creating a little more definition. I did flip over the stencil when I came to do this one, so it's not creating the exact same repeat. And where you've got these little markings already, it's worth deepening the shadows there. Good, so that's already quite nice. I think before I add any water, I might come in with another shading colour. So this is hickory smoke, and as you can see, I'm adding that in slightly fewer places. That's just giving us a little bit of extra. And then the other thing birch trees have is this wonderful crossing pattern. So you see these, we'll add more detail later, but I want to add some soft ones. You can see that's creating that classic silver birch marking on the trunks. And it's just about, it's spending some time looking at birch trees. They are possibly my favourite tree in the world. So I do spend quite a lot of time looking at birch trees and noticing the things about them which give you joy. And for me, it's texture, clearly. You know I'm a lover of texture, crackle, corrugated texture pastes through stencils, rusty patinas, gritty rustiness. So texture is always going to be interesting to me. Right, this I might start just softening with just a water brush. You could use a brush dipped in water. It's absolutely fine. And I'm going to aim to just stick to the sides of the trunks, just creating those moments of slightly deeper tone. And it's soft and subtle at the moment because it's springtime, it's summer, it's not dramatic winter shadows. Having said that, the sun across the desk was quite dramatic just now. Hopefully it's moving off and it's slightly less annoying. But that is, for me, creating where I'm leaving the trunks lighter in the middle. It's creating that sense of the lighter part coming forwards towards me. So shadows are always going to recede into the paper and the lighter areas are going to feel as though they're coming forwards towards you. So without yet, I'm not saying I won't, without yet adding any highlight to the centre of the trunk, we're already creating that little sense of shadow and depth. So the card is now, the trees are now slightly damp in places where I've hit them with water. So if I go straight in with my black soot, it will immediately be drawn into all that moisture and spread out. So it'll be quite a quick way probably of adding some slightly deeper shadows, slightly more definition. If you want to make fine marks with these pencils, you do just need to make sure you're keeping the point a little bit sharpened, and the black soot one is, because I for the most part do add finer lines with it. And then I'm going to come in and again hit that sort of, these again are going to be softened, and then when we're happy with where we are with soft lines, I'll come back in for detail later on. But it's getting the soft shading in first of all. And again, under the branches that are going across is quite a good way to give those dimension. And I've sort of chosen to have this one coming in front, that tree's behind, as a kind of looseness to choosing what's in front and what's behind. As the sun dances through a forest, the branches seem to flicker and move in any case. So one branch that one moment is waving in front of something might in another moment seem to be somewhere else. So yes, again, hitting those markings and putting some shading underneath them. Let's have that branch coming in front. There it is. And you see I'm trying to keep things quite loose. I don't want to overwork, and I don't want to overthink. I'm going to let the pencil just sort of dance and let those details emerge. Good, that might be a time for another bit of water. So you can see the shadows are getting a bit deeper and those lines in some places are quite strong, but as soon as you come in with the water, it moves the pigment around. And this will be the same with any watercolor pencil, just creating those shadows down the sides of the trees in order to give us that little illusion of dimension, but also starting to build those delicious birch textures. So yes, texture, one of my favorite things about birch trees, but the shimmer of the bark, the shimmer of the white bark amidst the light foliage of spring, the colours they go in the autumn. Just the sort of glow of when the autumn leaves change. Value from, and then the elegant silhouette of them in winter. These delicate branches and sprigs they have. There we go. So let's just look at those two with the water applied to one to create that shadowy dimension, and on the other still just those slightly jerky little lines. And if there are places where you feel like there's too much pigment going on, just moisten it, grab a piece of paper towel, and you should be able to lift up. I'm working today on a couple of the Ranger media tags, because I do have some in my stash. I don't only have my TP versions. I wanted these because they're a paler manila. They're a paler heavy stock. There we go. So you can choose to draw some of that pigment across. So again, you're starting to create those lovely birch textures. And in places the sun might be hitting more strongly. Right, I'm going to soften these on this tag too. And then I'll come back and we'll add maybe some detailing, maybe some foreground stamping, and maybe some real pressed grasses. I've made sure these are fully dry with a quick blast from the heat gun so that I can add a little bit of detailing, confident that it's not going to run away in the water. So this is hickory smoke, just going in for a first couple of horizontal strokes in places. And that's, as you can see, a very subtle bit of birch detailing. A little bit over here, a little bit over here. Just the bits of sort of peeling bark that you sometimes get. Then I'm going to come in with the black soot, and again with quite light pressure, just in a couple of places, going to add some real detail marks. Those wonderful speckles and stripes and textured moments that bring a birch tree to life. And again, I'm trying to stay quite loose, not decide too much. Just see where the pencil carries itself. You can be as bold with this as you like. A bold black line down the outside might start to look a little bit cartoony, so that's why I try to stay light in the application. But if you like a bold look, if you like a sort of dramatic presence of the trees, then by all means give them a really firm outlining detail, and then they'll really stand forward from the background. I'm looking for a fairly soft, sketchy look at the moment. I might define a little bit where I've decided that a branch is going in front or behind of a particular area. To just, oh, hello, why are you upside down? I must have turned you sideways at some point to work on something. So again, just adding those little, and it's really scribbling. I'm just scribbling some marks on and enjoying. Did I decide that was going in front? Yes, so I might define that a little bit. And the other thing you can do is just add a couple of really fine twigs, because that's the other thing that birch trees very often have going on, is just a little extra twiggy growth happening in places. It's sort of merging into those berry branches in the background, but that doesn't matter. Again, if you're walking through a woodland, outlines and things aren't necessarily particularly clear at most times of day. The dappled light in forest woodland can play tricks with the eye. I think that might be sort of enough. And now I'm going to be very careful about not adding additional moisture, because now I don't want to soften those detail marks. So if I'm working with another wet ink or whatever it might be, I'm going to be quite careful with the amount of moisture that ends up on the paper, because I want these details to stay as details. If, therefore, you want those to stay permanent, work with a not water reactive pencil. You could work with a regular pencil, which will be much less inclined to move when water hits it. You could even work with a fine liner. That's quite nice, I think. So my next step is going to be just to have a look at one of these. Yeah, you see, I want to do that. No shadow of a doubt, but that I want to do that for once. Just thinking I might like a little bit of white highlighting into places in these trees. So this is the Dr. P.H. Martin's bleed proof white. I'm going to put a little bit on the mat like so, just fishing it out. I don't want to put sort of a big solid white line down the middle of these, although that might do a really good thing in terms of bringing the focus forward. All I want to do is create a little bit of variation in the colour of the trunks so that they are whiter in places, and that's going to give us, again, just that wonderful glow of the silver birch. So again, I'm just using the water brush with the ink, which means that it might bleed. It's all very well for it to say it's bleed proof, but if I keep adding water to it, eventually it's going to become more transparent and less proof against other colours bleeding into it. But as I said, I'm trying to be careful and avoid those places where I've got texture, because if I apply this over that texture, it is going to move around and shift. So just creating a little bit of highlighted variation in these trunks, moments where maybe the sun is hitting them, or it's just a slightly paler part of the tree. The variation in whites is pretty extreme at times. There we go. It's just a finesse. Absolutely not compulsory. I mean, none of these layers are needed. As you saw at the beginning, the Tim Holtz stencil looks perfectly fine as it is. While we're here, might just use up some of this a little bit more by spattering it quite gently. I'm going to get rid of most of that spatter so that I've got quite a delicate white spatter going on there. And again, it's just motes of dust dancing in the sunlight, or maybe little specks of pollen, or maybe it's even insect life dancing through the air. It's a randomness and a life and a movement that I think spatter can bring to a nature scene that is really valuable. There we go. Might dry those again, quick blast with the heat gun, so that we can take ourselves into the final decision about whether we do another layer of stamping before adding the grasses or not. I had thought I might use these big grasses in the foreground, but I think since we've got real grasses, that might be over-egging the pudding. But I've just noticed this lovely speckly texture, which I think might be another quite nice way to add a bit of, yeah, birchy texture. So I'm going to take the watering can Archival and just using my fingertips hit a couple of those birch trunks with a bit of speckly texture. So I'm really trying, although it wouldn't matter if it ended up in the woodland. I think we did this maybe with my bark texture stamp last time, or one of the crackle texture stamps, I can't remember. But you can see any texture stamp will add just a little bit of extra detailing to those trees, and a little bit of extra light, and that's quite nice, particularly going over those places where we've just put the white. It's giving that white some texture. I think that's quite effective. Quite enjoying that. You can tell I'm enjoying it from the fact that I'm doing lots more of it. That's really quite good. There we go. I'll lift it up so you can have a look. So just those little speckles adding detail. I want through here a little bit more of those grassy stems, I think, in the background as opposed to the foreground. So again, lining up my stencil, nothing stopping me coming back in at this stage. Might not mount it this time because I want to be quite precise with where I'm putting them. I want a little bit more down here where there's a gap. Oops. There we go, just about made it. And a little bit more through this middle, just to build a bit more background detail in some places. That's nice. And then over here. And then, rather than the large leaves, I'm thinking, oh, flip it, remember? I might just add a little of this also in front of the stems so that these grasses are growing not only behind, is one kind of place they are, but just a little bit along the bottom here. Yeah, there we go. That can also be in front of the trunks. So that's building a bit more depth. I'm pressing more firmly as well so they get slightly darker ink. So that should also give me the impression that these grasses are in the foreground as opposed to those ones in the background. I could have done it in a darker colour, could have done the ones in the background in a lighter colour. But that's giving us quite a good sensation of, oh, yeah, that's happy making. Grassy forest. And that means I think I probably don't want to add any of these big grass stems. We'll leave it at the crackle stamp. Just a little bit wondering whether I want to add an ephemera stamp. There's something quite nice about when you've got a really organic, naturalistic look going on, just breaking it up with something like this. I'm going to do it. No more wondering. Let's do it. We'll keep it fairly subtle though, with maybe Pebble Beach. Just to get a bit of that. And I'm going to put that, where shall I put it? I'll put it here. Yes, I like that. So it's just this kind of moment of going, no, this isn't nature. It's art. It's playtime. It's got that vintage ephemera look to it as well. Oh, that's nice. What else have we got here that we could do? We've got another nice. Oh, should we have some William Shakespeare? I did get this stamp set out, and I think it was with the kind of sense of maybe I wanted that. One of my all-time favourite stamps. Let's have some William Shakespeare drifting through the wood. And I'm going to kind of attach it to the ephemera stamping we've already got. Now, I know that's the William Shakespeare frontispiece. Not everybody would, but I know. Can't quite see the. There we are. I really love that. In my woodland, might put another bit down here because that's going to be nice. And the other half down here. So finally, that makes me deeply happy. Really interesting. Little grass, little bit of grassiness here, little bit of grassiness here. I've got a number of them, various sizes. That's maybe a bit too much. This one's a little more delicate. I think it's that and that, isn't it? So with these, I think it's going to be a question of applying to the grasses themselves. You could go with a big collard glue or matte medium gluing across the tag, were it not for the fact that we've still got water reactive inks on there, and they're not going to respond well to me brushing glue over the whole of the tag. So I think I'm going to live with what I can get glued like so, and then just use a piece of why is there never a piece of paper around when you want one, to just encourage that grass down onto there. That's going to be fine. That's going to glue. A little bit of that. So same thing over here. almost at the end of this Cosmic Shimmer glue. Fine applicator is really useful, obviously, as you can see with this kind of work, but thankfully I've got some more ready to get out and play with. There we go, into there, a little bit up that very fine stem, and pop it down maybe there. And again, just a bit of paper to press that down like so. I think it might just now be a couple of word stickers and we'll be done. Why don't you come back for the zoom in on the close-up and you'll see what words I've chosen to add to these tags, but part of me wants to just keep that simplicity because the birch forest itself is magic. If you've enjoyed this, please give me a thumbs up. If you're not already subscribed, it would be lovely to have your company on this creative journey. As always, I will link to as many relevant videos as I can remember down in the description below, and there'll be a list of the ingredients we've used today. Thank you so much for your company, and happy crafting all.